The video on here, we're going to start in just a minute. Are you on?
Yes.
Is on cultural psychology. Now, I got a whole video on it, so I'm not going to talk about it too much. But what culture you live in can affect the way you think and the way you perceive things and how your personality turns out. In America, in a lot of Western societies, a lot of industrialized societies, they say that we live in what's called an individualist culture. Individualist cultures stress the individual. You are, the individual is important. You know, it's important to fulfill yourself. It's important for you to do well. Your self-esteem is very important. Have you ever heard people talk about you need high self-esteem? And you're always worried about yourself. Winning is the most important thing. You know, you'll hear your coaches say that. Winning isn't the only thing. Winning isn't everything. It's the only thing. It's whatever the statement goes. So we call those individualist cultures that worry about the individual. Not all cultures are like that. Some cultures are called collectivist, where you're not worried about the individual, you're worried more about the group. Group harmony is what's important. They don't care as much in collectivist culture, for instance, about individual rights. It's the harmony of the group that's more important. And you might find in a collectivist culture, for instance, people don't, here in this individualist society we have in America, there's a lot of struggles between, say, students and their parents, kids and their parents. You ever have a fight with your mom or dad? That's just kind of normal, right? Your parents will even tell you, it's normal for the kids to fight with their parents. It doesn't happen in collectivist cultures. It doesn't happen at all. They're too worried about the family being cohesive and as a group, and they don't fight. So it's different. So that's what the video goes over. There's a couple other terms, monochronic culture versus polychronic culture. We are in a monochronic culture. A monochronic culture is worried about time is a very important thing. It's important to be on time to school. It's important to make your meeting. You do this class, and then you have this time set up for lunch, and then this next class. And the day is ordered in a series of time periods, and then it's time to go to sleep and such. In a polychronic culture, it's not set up that way. You know, you don't make appointments. You just come and go as you please, and nobody's upset if you're late. You know, they'll see you whenever it happens. It's different. So places like the Middle East and Mexico and South America and Africa, those are polychronic cultures. So again, they talk about this in the video, and I'm not going to get into it too much. There is a difference in culture between the South and the North. And there's a study that was done on this. If you turn to page 62 in your book, there was a study done on male aggressiveness. Argument-related homicide rates, deaths caused by fights to restore status and honor among men, are 5 times higher in southern and western states. For those of you who are at the book, there's a lot more homicide between males in the south and west than there is in the north. And they studied this, and they found out that the South has what's called a culture of honor. And if you disrespect somebody's honor in the South and in the West, you're likely to get killed over it. You've probably heard, don't disrespect me, you know, something like that. That's very important. This culture of honor is very important, but it's only in the South and West that it's that important. In the North, they don't really care about it as much. And so that's the beginnings that's a sign of a difference in culture between the two areas, and they discuss this in the book. So culture is a pervasive thing that you don't notice until you go to somewhere else in the world and see what their culture's like. So, kind of interesting to keep that in mind. Cultural psychology is a real big branch of psychology. Oh, there's the map. I could have just showed you that. I'll let you read about that. And the last section of the reading talks about humanist psychology. And I don't have this on your syllabus, so make sure you write it down. I forgot to include pages 63 through 65. It's 3 pages. And humanist psychology, the humanist approach is very hard to grasp. Humanist psychology is to approach your is to use unconditional positive regard. In humanist psychology, each person is trying to fulfill trying to become complete as a person. You may have heard of a guy named Maslow. He has a pyramid called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Have you ever heard of that? And he's a humanist psychologist. And here's his hierarchy. He says that once you've taken care of the level, you can then move to the level above it. Let me turn on the light so you can see this well. He says the first thing that people need to take care of are their physiological needs. You have to have air and water and food and shelter and sleep. And sex he put in there too. And once you have those things, you can then worry about the next level up. You can then worry about your safety and security. In other words, people will choose to sacrifice safety and security for food and water, for instance. Does that make sense? You'd sacrifice your safety for food and water, because you die without food and water, right? So once you have these physiological needs met, you can then worry about safety and security. Once you're safe and secure, you can worry about love and belongingness. Once you have love and belongingness, you can worry about self-esteem. And once your self-esteem is high, you can move to a level that he calls self-actualization. Vitality, creativity, self-sufficiency, authenticity, playfulness, meaningfulness. You can find a meaning to your life. That's what humanist psychologists strive for. Find some meaning to your life. Try and fill all these needs going up this pyramid, and you can finally get to this top of the pyramid, which is called a self-actualized person. And he says, Maslow said, very few people actually make it through the top of this pyramid. You can get stuck on any one of these levels, you know. There are people out on the streets who don't have a roof over their head that are stuck at the bottom. And then, you know, there are people who get stuck looking for love and never finding it, and so forth. So humanist psychology is this kind of, to me, it's a little bit, I don't know, touchy-feely kind of psychology, you know. You're trying to reach. Another thing that humanist psychologists talk about is something called unconditional positive regard. Meaning, they treat their patients, you know, a patient comes in and they're feeling bad, if they're depressed, here's how they'll treat them. They'll go, oh, don't be depressed, you're such a good person. Think about all the good things that happen to you. Everything's good, everything's positive. You know, you can do this, you know. Have some strength. You have so much strength inside you. Just push and become that person. You can find love. You can do it. You know, it's that kind of thing. And you're like pumped up after you go to these humanist psychologists and you're ready to go and you're feeling good about yourself. So that's humanist psychology. Complete love and support with no strings attached. That's what your psychologist will be like if you ever go to a humanist psychologist. And that, for some people, that really helps. So, we need to get to this video. Make sure you read the rest of chapter 2. And pay attention to this cultural psychology video, because it covers a lot of stuff that's in this section. If I can find it. And you can actually stop filming.